Welcome to the Special Forces in World War II podcast, transmitting on this frequency. This broadcast is your dedicated channel for comprehensive intelligence regarding World War II Special Forces operations. Our transmissions encompass in-depth analysis of their strategic maneuvers, cutting-edge equipment, illustrious biographies, and an array of pertinent subjects. The orchestration of these transmissions is executed by the expert team of the Special Forces in World War II website, a squad deeply immersed in the historical theatre. For further insights, visual aids, and captured moments frozen in time, navigate to our virtual headquarters at worldwar2-soft.com. Your immersion into the front lines of knowledge awaits. Over and out. Welcome back to another episode of the Special Forces in World War II podcast, where we explore the bold, the daring, and the extraordinary stories, tactics, and equipment of the special and specialized forces whose actions helped shape the outcome of the Second World War. I am your host, Michael Weyers, and this is the final episode in our series on Unternehmen Danzig, the German airborne operation against the bridges at Feldwebel, Portsteffen, and Canal, and against Fort Eben Emael itself. In the previous episodes, we followed the planning at Hildesheim under Hauptmann Walter Koch, the long months of secret glider training, and the assault groups Stahl, Beton, and Eisen as they seized the canal crossings at Feldwebel, Portsteffen, and Canal. In the first episode on Sturmgruppe Granit, we walked the corridors of Fort Eben Emael itself. We saw its construction between 1932 and 1935. We saw its position above the Albert Canal between Maastricht and Vichy. We saw its 3 underground levels, its cupolas and its casemates. We saw a garrison of around 1,200 men. We then moved to Hildesheim in the autumn of 1939. There, student and Hauptmann Walter Koch assembled Sturmabteilung Koch under conditions of absolute secrecy. We followed the selection of Oberleutnant Rudolf Witzig to lead the assault. We followed the long months of glider training on Czech and Czechoslovak fortifications. We followed the development of the hollow charge in 50 kilogram and 12.5 kilogram form. We followed the rehearsals at Hildesheim. We closed with the launch from Cologne-Ostheim. We closed with the loss of 2 gliders before the fort. We closed with Witzig himself, stranded in a weed-filled field 6 kilometers outside Cologne. His tow rope had parted over the Rhine. In the second episode, we joined the assault on the fortress itself. The 9 remaining gliders touched down on the superstructure at 5:25. We tracked each Gruppe in turn across the roof. Feldwebel Emael landed at Maastricht 2. Feldwebel Arendt landed at Maastricht 1. Feldwebel Wenzel landed at Nord. Feldwebel Haug landed at the anti-aircraft position and moved to Cupola 120. Feldwebel Harlos and Feldwebel Heinemann landed at the northern decoy turrets. Oberjäger Unger landed at Cupola Nord. Oberjäger Neuhaus landed at Missoud. Feldwebel Hübel led the reserve Gruppe to Vichy 1. We watched Oberfeldwebel Wenzel take command in Witzig's place. We saw the Pionier work across the superstructure with hollow charges, flamethrowers, and improvisation. We followed Walter Meyer of the missing Gruppe 2 as he crossed the Albert Canal alone at Canal to reach his Gruppenführer. We closed with 62 Fallschirmjäger holding the captured roof. We closed with Witzig still trying to reach his fort. In this final episode, we close the story. We follow Witzig from his return to the fort on the morning of May 10th, 1940. We follow the long afternoon of Casemate demolitions. We follow the Belgian counterattacks. We follow the night crossing of the Albert Canal by the 51st Pionier-Bataillon. We follow Commandant Chaplain on the afternoon of May 11th, 1940. The most modern fortress in Europe is about to fall. So, let's start at the beginning. The fortress sits silent in the early light. By 7:30 on May 10th, 1940, 62 German soldiers hold the roof of Fort Eben Emael. They have been in position for nearly 2 hours. 2 men lie dead, 8 bear serious wounds, 4 carry lighter injuries. Oberleutnant Witzig and Troop 2 remain missing somewhere beyond the fort. The Fallschirmjäger of Sturmgruppe Granit grip the upper works with thinning numbers. Around them, the destruction tells its own story. All anti-aircraft guns and exposed machine guns lie destroyed. The casemates designated Mi Nord, Mi Sud, Wies 1, Maastricht 1, Maastricht 2, Cupola 120, and Cupola Nord stand neutralized. Only Cupola Sud continues firing, though at reduced capacity. The surrounding blockhouses remain inactive. Apart from intermittent artillery fire passing overhead, the surface of the fort lies relatively quiet. The Fallschirmjäger hold the upper works without information about what stirs beneath them. They have no knowledge of Major Jotran's preparations in the tunnels below. A Belgian counterattack from any of the exits could reverse the situation within minutes. The nearest Wehrmacht spearheads lie approximately 160 kilometers distant. They advance across the Netherlands toward the Albert Canal. Under the operational plan, codenamed Fall Gelb, infantry of the 4th Panzer Division must reach the walls within 4 hours of the glider's landing. They will then relieve Sturmgruppe Granit. If the fort still holds out, the division assumes responsibility for its capture. Only the southeastern sector of the surface remains contested. There, the hollow charges have failed for reasons that investigators never establish. The Fallschirmjäger's task requires 2 things. They must prevent the Belgian garrison from regaining the surface installations. They must hold until the 4th Panzer Division arrives. Their numbers lie thinly distributed across the fort. Only 40 men stand immediately available for fighting. Others shelter in casemates against Belgian artillery fire from the south. Feldwebel Portsteffen sends out runners for information. A runner shortly afterwards reports that Unger has been killed. He adds that Obergefreiter Elser, second in command of his trupp, cannot subdue the 75mm guns at position 31. Wenzel asks whether the runner has seen any of Walter Meyer's Gruppe 2. The runner has not. Wenzel orders him to find Oberleutnant Witzig and requests that Schwarz's Gruppe reinforce Elser. The runner returns and reports that Witzig cannot be located anywhere on the fort. None of Schwarz's reserve Gruppe from Witzig's glider can be found either. Gilg returns with the same report a short time later. The signalers cannot locate Witzig. Wenzel concludes that Witzig's glider has not arrived at the objective. Lieutenant Delica, next in line for command, also remains unaccounted for. Delica's glider has landed approximately 460 meters south of the fort. The volume of Belgian fire coming from that direction indicates that Niedermeyer's trupp, which landed with Delica, fights heavily engaged. Feldwebel Wenzel directs the Funker to a suitable position to establish radio contact with Sturmabteilung Koch headquarters. A radio position takes shape at the northern rampart. A dressing station rises at the same location. Early fighting has already produced 2 dead and 12 wounded among the Sturmgruppe. Radio contact reaches Sturmgruppebaton at Vroonhoven. There, Hauptmann Walter Koch maintains his command post. Wenzel transmits a situation report. He requests close air support to suppress approaches to the fort entrances. He also asks for fire to prevent Belgian reinforcement from the village of Eben Emael. Wenzel assumes command of the operation. No one disputes this decision. Delica remains pinned in a casemate to the south under heavy Belgian artillery fire. He serves as a Luftwaffe communications officer responsible for directing Stuka support. His role lies outside infantry combat. Witzig later states that Delica had the opportunity to take command but did not do so. Feldwebel Wenzel calls for Stuka support by radio. Within 20 minutes, several flights arrive over the fort. They attack the 120mm cupola and the casemate at the fort's entrance. Following a further request to Sturmabteilung Koch, 2 He 111 aircraft pass over the fort at 180 meters altitude. They drop ammunition containers by parachute onto the position. The drop zone lies under heavy Belgian fire. To avoid casualties among his own men, Wenzel approaches Heine Lang. Lange is wounded and lies in the care of Belgian prisoners. Wenzel orders the prisoners to recover the containers. Lange, who speaks French, translates the order to the prisoners. The prisoners comply, and the supplies reach the German position. At 8:30, a Fallschirmjäger sights a glider descending in looping circles over the fort. No reinforcements have been promised for this hour. The aircraft proves to be a DFS-230. The glider draws no anti-aircraft fire from the surrounding Belgian positions. It lands near Casemate 19, where Wenzel has established his headquarters. Wenzel and others approach the glider across the rampart. They find that Oberleutnant Witzig has returned with it. Witzig emerges with Feldwebel Schwarz and Reserve Gruppe 11. By the time Witzig reaches Eben Emael, most of the fort already lies in German hands. Fighting on the surface has largely subsided. Fire continues only sporadically and at limited intensity. Witzig proceeds directly to Objective 19, the designated command post location. There he reports to Wenzel, who has assumed control of the position in the interim. Feldwebel Wenzel briefs Oberleutnant Witzig on the situation, and the operation continues without interruption. Wenzel has already been receiving situation reports from the various assault elements. A functioning command post stands ready at the rampart. Essential items lie assembled to sustain control of the platoon. These include aerial photographs, call signs, radios, and command material. By the time Witzig reaches the fort, Sturmgruppe Granit has largely accomplished its principal mission. The remaining tasks demand further effort from the thinly spread Fallschirmjäger. They must enter the fort's interior through the various openings. They must blunt any Belgian counterthrusts from the tunnels below. They must contain the garrison until ground forces arrive from the east. The success of the relief operation is not assured at this hour. The Belgian garrison remains unaware of the extent of its defeat. It remains fully capable of further resistance. The Fallschirmjäger, at the northern point of the fort, lie widely separated from the others. Sporadic firing across the surface indicates continuing German activity. The pattern of fire points particularly to the southwest. There, Feldwebel Arendt holds his position against the Belgian defenders. After Witzig reaches Eben Emael and resumes command at Casemate 19, the operation continues across the surface. Feldwebel Arendt, holding his position to the southwest, now turns to the structures around his own casemate. He sends Merz to destroy Casemate 10. Aerial photographs have not clearly identified this installation. It appears as a high, round-topped concrete structure on the surface. The structure proves to be the air conditioning outlet for the fort. Merz blows the grill off a ventilator and drops in a 2.7-kilogram charge. The crew of Arendt's Casemate soon suffer from fumes drifting through the ventilation system. Feldwebel Arendt then moves to assess the lower levels of the fort. He leaves Stopp and Kupsch in the casemate above. He takes Merz and Müller down the 118-step shaft into the depths. Their torches show a haze hanging in the corridor. They find a latrine and a 105mm gun barrel along the way. They observe the tunnel leading towards the casemate. A massive steel door stands in place across the passage. Behind it, a wall of steel beams blocks further access. On returning to the casemate, they find the air has cleared. Belgian artillery fire that has pinned Arendt's squad inside now lifts. He moves his men into the open and sweeps westward through the woods. He finds no Belgian troops, but locates unoccupied trenches in the undergrowth. On returning to the casemate, Arendt resolves to attack Casemate 4 in the valley below. He leads the move himself, followed by Kupsch and Stopp. Each man carries half of a 50-kilogram charge across the open ground. The party advances under cover of fences and brush. They close to within 27 meters of the casemate. The casemate carries an observation cupola, which Arendt judges he can climb. Using the stepped concrete surfaces, he reaches the top. The others follow with the charge. Feldwebel Arendt centers the charge, fits the fuse, ignites it, and withdraws. He does not return to assess the damage. A Belgian patrol watches from approximately 23 meters away. The patrol does not detect the operation. Approximately 15 minutes later, Arendt lies on the turf near his casemate. The rest of the squad shelters inside the structure. A Belgian 10-man patrol passes at a distance of about 32 meters. They move towards the casemate Neuhaus has captured. The patrol does not look in Arendt's direction. He re-enters the casemate through the opening. Stopp pulls him through. Merz then fires from the opening. The patrol withdraws under his fire. Belgian machine gun fire subsequently strikes the casemate. At 1600, with his squad reunited, Feldwebel Arendt decides to demolish the stairwell. He worries about Belgian activity in the area. He also considers the possibility of having to withdraw northward. He wants to leave nothing usable behind for the garrison. He orders the explosives and equipment moved out in preparation for demolition. Arendt sends Merz to Witzig with a request for reinforcements. He intends to occupy the trenches he located earlier near the southern end of the fort. Holding those trenches will deny the Belgians the surface. Witzig, now firmly in command at Objective 19, comes forward to assess the position. He approves Arendt's plan and dispatches elements of 2 troops to support him. Before Feldwebel Arendt can position the reinforcements in the trenches, a report indicates suspicious movement near the southern end of the fort. He moves his machine gun and several men to the casemate's southern embankment. There, they observe a Belgian skirmish line forming below them. The line begins to advance, under fire, toward the German position. The Belgians, under Lieutenant de Sluver, close almost to the casemate. Merz, the German machine gunner, suffers a wound in the arm from a grenade fragment. Arendt attempts to organize a counterattack at the embankment. He finds that several of his men have fallen back to cover. The Belgian attack ends when de Sluver's troops exhaust their grenades and carbine ammunition. They break contact and withdraw. Feldwebel Arendt, Schwarz, and the wounded Merz return to the casemate. The Belgian attack has delayed the demolition of the stairwell. A German voice then calls out from the surface. It is Wenzel, who earlier handed command of the Sturmgruppe back to Witzig. Meanwhile, Oberleutnant Witzig has ordered Feldwebel Wenzel to take his Gruppe and clear Belgian troops from the woods. The woods lie along the northwestern surface of the fort. Wenzel has moved out, come under heavy fire, and pulled back. He has judged 5 men insufficient to advance against the position. Witzig has assembled additional men and returned them to Wenzel's command. He has ordered a renewed move towards the woods. On the second move, Wenzel finds the area quiet. He moves south through unfamiliar terrain to Casemate 12. There he meets Arendt at the position. Arendt advises him to enter the casemate. He warns Wenzel that conditions outside are unsafe. Wenzel disagrees and invites Arendt to confirm this himself. Arendt brings his men out into the open. A volley of fire kills one of them immediately. Belgian fire on the casemate face prevents re-entry through the front. The party moves behind the casemate. There it lies, screened from Belgian fire. Feldwebel Arendt places his men in defensive positions on the rear face. Wenzel announces that he will go to Niedermeyer for help. He then takes a hit. He reports, "Ich bin verwundet, mein Kopf," and loses consciousness briefly on the turf. Belgian small arms fire intensifies around the position. Belgian artillery begins to fall on the casemate. The Germans cannot locate the source of fire. Additional Fallschirmjäger arrive at the position. Someone reports that Wenzel is dead. Wenzel responds that he is not and calls for bandages. Kramer reaches him through the fire. A bullet has pierced his helmet at the scalp line. He is bleeding heavily into the turf. Kramer drags Wenzel into the casemate and bandages the wound. Other men enter after him through the opening. Arendt enters through the opening, but does not clear it fully. Stopp pulls him through into cover. Schultz finds the fire on the entrance too heavy. He withdraws towards Niedermeyer's casemate instead. Inside, Feldwebel Arendt's men cannot approach the opening because of incoming fire. They move to the left 75mm gun in the casemate. Earlier in the day, during a quieter period, Arendt had taken precautions. He had had one of the Belgian prisoners taken that morning explain the operation of the gun. With a member of his squad observing from the opening, the prisoner now shows Arendt how to traverse the 75mm. Arendt fires the gun as rapidly as he can load it. The Belgian fire eventually slackens under the weight of his shells. When Belgian fire ceases, Wenzel and others withdraw northward. Arendt and his men remain inside the casemate. While Arendt holds Casemate 12 with the captured 75mm gun, the Belgian command structure beneath the fort begins to react. Close to 10 o'clock, Major van der Auwera issues orders to several gun crew chiefs. He directs them to retake their casemates and cupolas and restore their weapons to service. Sergeant Kremers reaches the turret of his 120mm guns. He finds it essentially as he left it. He calls for a technician to repair the minor damage. By 10 o'clock, the 120mm guns are again operable. Van der Auwera passes the report to the command post. Lieutenant de Husse serves as the firing officer for these guns. He awaits orders to engage the bridge at Vroonhoven. That bridge stands as the primary target assigned to the 120mm guns under the Belgian artillery fire plan. The orders do not come. The Belgian tactical situation near the bridge remains unclear. Liège declines to authorize Commandant Jotron to open fire. De Husse cannot persuade Jotron to act without higher authority. He refuses Kremer's requests to fire on his own initiative. At 11:30, after approximately 90 minutes delay, authorization arrives at last. Kremers fires the left-hand 120mm gun. A moment later, the tube of the other gun explodes. Feldwebel Portsteffen has dropped a charge into it from outside. The atmosphere in the cupola grows unbreathable. The crew withdraws to the lower level. 10 minutes later, de Hoos returns to inspect the guns. He finds them unsafe to fire. He reports this to Jotron. Commandant Jotron responds with new orders. If de Hoos can return the guns to service, he should engage Maastricht-Lanneken, the canal, and position 31. The crews work on the guns, but cannot clear the breaches. The 120mm guns take no further part in the battle. German advance elements subsequently cross the bridge at Vroonhoven. That bridge had stood as the gun's principal assigned target. The crew in the cupola fires a carbine at occasional German troops, visible through the observation ports. It is the only functional weapon remaining to them. The fight in the air follows a similar pattern of frustration. At 6:35, Junkers 87 Stukas in V formation pass over the fort. Their mission requires them to bomb Belgian casemates and cupolas on request. They look for signals from the Fallschirmjäger indicating targets. They find none on the surface. Each captured installation has been marked with a swastika. After several minutes overhead, the aircraft break away. They pursue targets of opportunity, their secondary mission. They bomb the village of Eben Emael and the fort entrance. Local inhabitants have taken refuge in shelters excavated into a nearby hill. They remain largely unharmed there. Others shelter in cellars. The bombing kills 36 civilians and wounds more. Chaplain Meesen raises a request with van der Auwera, who consents. On leaving the fort, Lecron finds that approximately half of his cottage has been destroyed. He recovers his wife and 2 of the children, dead from the rubble. His youngest daughter, an infant, remains unhurt. He wraps her in his jacket and returns with her to the fort. An armorer shapes sheet metal into a crude cradle in the dispensary. Lecron visits her when able between his duties at the Casemate. Meesen, as a non-combatant, responsible for the wounded and dying, enjoys free movement through the fort. He observes events in several of its sectors. After a series of heavy explosions, he learns that Casemate 12 has been knocked out. The wounded from the Casemate then filter into the hospital. Some walk and others come carried. They show lacerations, burns, smoke blackening, and bleeding. None can identify the device responsible for the explosions. Several of the wounded report that seriously injured men might still lie in the Casemate. Verbois lies among the names mentioned. Meesen, who has administered communion to Verbois regularly, puts on a mask. He moves through the tunnels, which fill with yellow smoke. He feels his way along the wall with his right hand. His lamp proves of little use in the haze. At the junction where the tunnel from Casemate 12 meets the main tunnel, Meesen encounters Major van der Auwera. Van der Auwera agrees to accompany him to look for the wounded. They pass the steel hatch to the Casemate. Meesen notes that no Belgians remain in the area. Van der Auwera replies that Germans are present above them. They begin to climb the stairs, with van der Auwera leading. They hear voices above. Meesen keeps a hand on van der Auwera's belt to maintain contact. Van der Auwera calls out in German, "Wer da? Wer da?" Above them, Feldwebel Arendt and his men hold the head of the shaft. The Fallschirmjäger they encounter are the same men who fired the 75mm gun and demolished the entry. Both sides hold position in the dark. Van der Auwera advances with his pistol raised. Meesen holds his belt to check him. Van der Auwera then observes that the Germans have placed a barrier 1 story above. They cannot descend through it. He flashes a light on the planking overhead to confirm this. They climb 3 further steps. Meesen then shouts a warning as an object passes them down the shaft. A grenade detonates below them. Both men hold the rail. They abandon the climb. They descend without helmets, feeling their way, and reach the bottom. The tunnel stands unlit around them. They move across debris to put distance between themselves and the shaft. They expect further grenades. After some distance, van der Auwera calls a halt, and they sit down. They then move on through the steel door barrier. Meesen assists van der Auwera in clearing debris from the doors. Both men close them. Van der Auwera remarks that his hearing has been affected. They then move towards the command post. Commandant Jotran's information on the enemy remains fragmentary throughout the morning. Reports from within the fort arrive in incomplete or distorted form. The nature of the German weapons compounds the difficulty of his assessment. A single charge produces effects sufficient to disable emplacements designed to withstand heavy artillery. The same emplacements stand armored against the largest anti-tank rounds and aerial bombs. The Belgians do not identify the weapon in use. Reports come in from Jotran's non-commissioned officers and officers within the fort. Further reports arrive from Belgian units in the vicinity that have observed the Fallschirmjäger. They indicate that the German force on the surface remains numerically small, whatever its effectiveness. By 9 o'clock, Jotran has established a degree of order in the tunnels. He begins considering means to retake the surface. He requires additional information before acting. At about this time, he receives a telephone call from Liège. The order directs him to clear the Germans from the top of the fort. Headquarters appears to have considered the scale of the German attack overestimated. Commandant Jotran dispatches Lieutenant Mouton to Casemate 19 on reconnaissance. Mouton reaches the entrance to the stairwell. He does not ascend to the gun chambers and returns with an incomplete report. Jotran rebukes him and sends him back at 10 o'clock. The round trip from Jotran's position to Casemate 19 takes 40 minutes. Jotran directs Mouton to establish whether the guns can fire. He must also determine whether the Belgians can reach the surface through the casemate. He assigns 2 sergeants to accompany him. The party enters the gun chamber on the second attempt. A large hole has been blown through the 1-meter concrete wall. Daylight pours through the breach. The walls stand scorched, and the floor lies covered with dust, concrete, and metal fragments. Mouton climbs the ladder to the observation cupola. He hears German voices above him. He signals his men to withdraw and returns to report. From Mouton's report and those of Chaplain Meesen and Major van der Auwera, Jotran makes his assessment. Retaking any of the casemates from the interior is not feasible. A retaking party would have to ascend between 18 and 27 meters of stairs. Those stairs lie exposed to fire from above. Commandant Jotran's principal concern lies elsewhere. The Germans might enter the fort in force through one or several unmanned casemates. Such a move could threaten casemate 23 and other operable positions. A successful penetration could force the fort's surrender. He orders the tunnels sealed, using the steel barriers provided for this contingency. He directs the construction of sandbagged revetments along the tunnels. The revetments will run between these barriers and the command post and other critical installations. 18 revetments are built and manned. Jotran has no infantry available for a counterattack. He has no artillerymen trained in infantry tactics. This reflects a Belgian army doctrinal decision taken after the First World War. Following extended debate, the army had determined that infantry would not be assigned to the forts. Infantry tasks, including outer defense and counterattack, would fall to mobile divisions in the vicinity. Fort garrisons were trained in artillery and technical disciplines, but not in infantry tactics. Commandant Jotrand, nonetheless, carries out his orders from Liège. He directs Lieutenant Verstraeten to conduct the counterattack. Verstraeten calls for volunteers across the garrison. Few respond to the call. 2 sergeants are sent to collect additional men. Verstraeten eventually musters 12, armed with carbines. The party leaves the fort and moves north along the wall towards Casemate 4. At 10 o'clock, a member of the patrol indicates the Casemate to Verstraeten. Repositioning, Verstraeten observes a German on top of the Casemate. The figure is probably Feldwebel Portsteffen himself. The man appears occupied with his work and inattentive to the patrol. He departs before the Belgians fire. The subsequent explosion from the charge Arendt has placed produces a magnitude that startles the Belgians. They initially attribute it to heavy howitzer fire. Verstraeten holds only light weapons. Belgian artillery fire begins to land ahead of his position. Stuka attack adds to the pressure on the patrol. He withdraws to the fort. Jotrand expresses dissatisfaction with the limited results and information obtained. He orders Verstraeten back to the surface. In the interval, Verstraeten's men have dispersed within the fort. A new force is assembled at the entrance. At 10:30, Verstraeten and Sergeant Leroux move out with a small party along the previous route. A Belgian soldier sights troops to the west approaching the fort entrance. Verstraeten, concerned about his line of withdrawal, turns back. At the entrance, he meets Captain Wagemans in command of 40 grenadiers. Wagemans has been ordered to counterattack the Germans on the fort. Unfamiliar with the terrain, he requests guides from the garrison. Jotrand assigns Verstraeten and Lieutenant Deuce to him. At 11:30, the force moves out. Wagemans goes without grenades, with only light weapons and under continuing Stuka harassment. He takes the force along the west wall. Halfway to Casemate 4, he divides the unit. He sends part, under Verstraeten, back towards Casemate 3. Verstraeten's men then climb onto the fort's surface. They move into the vicinity of Casemates 12 and 9. They fire on suspected German positions across the surface. At 11:15, Verstraeten suffers a wound and returns to the fort. Wagemans, in the woods along the west wall, hears firing on the southwestern surface. He cannot coordinate with Verstraeten's party. He concludes that something has gone wrong. At 1400, Wagemans encounters Lieutenant Deuce attending a seriously wounded soldier. Deuce departs and returns with 2 medical orderlies and a stretcher. Stuka attention prevents Captain Wagemans from mounting a productive attack through the rest of the day. Any aggressive movement draws an immediate air response. By nightfall, his men are exhausted and without water. He orders a withdrawal to the fort entrance. He sends a sergeant to Jotrand to request entry. Jotrand accepts the wounded, but declines to admit Wagemans' force. Such a body would strain the fort's facilities. Wagemans returns to his regiment. During the day, Commandant Jotrand periodically requests artillery fire from the sister forts Pontis and Barchon, several kilometers distant. Some of the fire is intended to keep Witzig's force under cover and discourage aggressive action. The requests come as a surprise to Pontis and Barchon. They had not anticipated being asked to fire on Eben Emael so soon after the outbreak of hostilities. The artillery fire prompts Witzig to reposition his force. With his small detachment, he recognizes that his hold on the surface remains tenuous. He considers it possible that the shelling is a preparatory bombardment for a Belgian infantry attack. Jotrand then transfers responsibility for organizing a further counterattack to Major van der Auwera. Van der Auwera assembles volunteers from different parts of the fort. Lieutenants de Sluver, Gigon, and Legay leave the fort under his command. Several non-commissioned officers and 20 men accompany them. Pontis and Barchon have by this time ceased firing. A small quantity of grenades is obtained. No machine guns are available. Recognizing that the interior of Casemate 12 is in German hands, Van der Auwera directs part of his force to its embankment. They are to fire at the Germans to the north as a diversion. With the remainder, he moves to Casemate 3, climbs onto the surface, and advances towards Casemate 9. He leaves a non-commissioned officer and 5 men on top of Casemate 6 to cover the rear. The counterattack proves poorly executed. Orders are followed reluctantly across the line. Several men refuse to advance under fire. Sergeant Hermes at Casemate 12 suffers a wound and withdraws. He leaves de Sluver with 3 men on the embankment. De Sluver observes German movement that appears intended to dislodge his position. He and his men expend their grenades on the advancing Fallschirmjäger. This is the same engagement Arendt's squad earlier described from Casemate 12, where de Sluver's men exhausted their grenades and broke contact. Major Van der Auwera moves over to order conservation of ammunition, but arrives too late. De Sluver then hears German orders shouted from the far side of the slope. Flare pistols are being fired across the surface. Red flares appear overhead, bringing Stuka attack. Van der Auwera's effective force is reduced to himself, de Sluver, Legay, 1 non-commissioned officer, and 4 enlisted men. At approximately 18:15, Van der Auwera orders a withdrawal. De Sluver has captured a German machine gun. Other members of the party have recovered German explosives. Under cover of the fort, they examine a photograph taken from a German casualty. The photograph depicts Fort Eben Emael, with casemates and defenses identified. Commandant Jotran then orders the reserve at Wonk to the fort. He telephones at approximately 1400. Meanwhile, at 1400, Casemate 4 resumes fire. The Belgians have apparently repaired the damage from Arendt's earlier attack on the cupola. Witzig sends Gramsci of Harlos's squad to silence it. Gramsci moves through the woods and places an 11-kilogram hollow charge against one of the embrasures. The charge silences the position for 3 hours. Lieutenant Levac commands the reserves at Wonk. He sets out at 1445 with 233 men. The distance measures 5 kilometers to the fort. At a forced march, arrival is expected within an hour. The column carries 2 machine guns, 3 automatic rifles, and 1 carbine per man. Stukas attack the column almost as soon as it begins moving. The march slows as men disperse into fields to avoid bombs. Levac and 15 others reach the fort at 1700. Others follow in small groups across the next hours. Total strength inside the fort reaches approximately 100 by nightfall. The condition of the arriving men is visible to the garrison. On arrival, Levac receives orders from Lieutenant Polis, directing an immediate attack on the surface to clear the Germans. He allows his men a brief rest. When Captain Hotemans, with Levac and Lieutenant Quitin, attempts to reassemble them, many evade detection in the tunnels. Approximately 100 men are eventually collected. Jotran obtains a heavy concentration of artillery fire from Pontis and Barchon in preparation for Levac's attack. At 1845, Lieutenant Levac's men move by 2s and 3s from the tunnel to an assembly point near Casemate 3. They pass stragglers from Van der Auwera's force returning to the fort. They advance towards Casemate 12. Levac observes Wougerman's grenadiers at a distance, but makes no attempt to coordinate. Darkness is approaching. and he judges coordination impracticable. He decides to attack the German force at Casemate 12. 8 men agree to follow him. The Germans halt their advance and bring machine gun fire on the party from several directions. The Belgians lie pinned down and withdraw, one by one, to the slope below Casemate 12. A Junkers 87 Stuka attack of approximately 1 hour follows. The survivors then return to the fort. Levaque reports to Hotemans at 1945. Shortly afterwards, Capitaine Hotemans, with Lieutenants Levaque, Gigon, and Quitin, and several non-commissioned officers circulate among the garrison for further volunteers. 60 men respond. The party moves to the exit. Stuka bombing then concentrates on the exit and prevents the force from leaving. Jotrand orders Levaque to route the force through the tunnels to Casemate 4. Casemate 4 has an external exit provided for counterattacks in a less observed direction. Halfway through the tunnels, a blast of air and the sound of a heavy explosion strike the force from the direction of Casemate 4. Witzig has anticipated a Belgian use of this exit. He has ordered Feldwebel Portsteffen to set a further charge against Casemate 4. Hotemans halts the force and moves forward alone into the casemate. He finds a large hole where the exit stood. Recognizing that Germans are close, he orders a sandbag barrier built in the tunnel. Levaque's force mans the barrier. Hotemans abandons the idea of counterattacking through this exit. After an interval, during which he consolidates his position, Witzig directs his attention to Casemate 17. The position commands the canal. Sergeant Henrote's crew continues to operate the 60mm gun and machine guns there. Witzig and German troops along the ridge on the far bank of the canal work jointly to reduce the position. The casemate threatens the relief operation crossing the bridges. Feldwebel Portsteffen conducts the attack. He first lowers a hollow charge over the wall on a rope. The rope is wound with primer cord connected to the fuse. He maneuvers it alongside the projecting concrete and detonates it without effect. He repeats the attempt 3 times. He works under fire from Casemate 35 to the south and from Belgian positions near Caen. The casemate continues to fire. The 75mm guns in Casemate 23 engage periodically during the day. They fire at Witzig's force and at German columns in the distance. Witzig approves Niedermayer's proposal to make a further attempt on the cupola. Niedermayer moves with List, Greif, and Stuka through brush along a hollow leading to the casemate. They observe the dome rising to fire at approximately 2-minute intervals. They intend to place a charge during a lowered interval. A flight of Junkers 87 Stukas then attacks the dome with 230-kilogram bombs. The German party withdraws from the position. When Niedermayer returns after the air attack, a Belgian machine gun outside the fort opens fire. He abandons the attempt and returns to his casemate. Far away from the casemates and tunnels of Fort Eben Emael, German ground forces are pushing west through Belgian resistance toward the fort. Oberst Melzer commands the 151st Infantry Regiment of the 4th Panzer Division. Oberleutnant Mikosch's 51st Pionier-Bataillon is attached to him. Their orders direct them to reach Witzig at Eben Emael. Stiff Belgian resistance slows them along the line of march. The destroyed bridges at Maastricht and Caen also impede them. 2 columns of Mikosch's battalion press forward regardless. By late afternoon on May 10, 1940, the battalion reaches Caen. A platoon under Feldwebel Portsteffen breaks off and turns south. His task requires him to cross the Albert Canal near the fort's northern tip. He must then link up with the Fallschirmjäger glidermen above. The remainder of the battalion crosses at Caen, swings south, and envelops the fort from the southwest. Portsteffen attempts several launches of inflated rubber assault craft. Belgian fire sweeps the canal across his front. Casemate 17 pours especially heavy fire onto his men. This is the same Casemate Feldwebel Portsteffen has attempted to silence with hollow charges. The embankment forces his troops into the open while they lower the boats. He breaks off the attempt as too costly. At 1900, the Belgian Lieutenant Moreau arrives at the fort. He serves as a staff officer for the commander of the 7th Division d'Infanterie. His inspection leaves him deeply troubled. German glider forces sent to seize the bridge at Casemate have crossed there despite its demolition. By 1600, they have overrun the Belgian defenders under Lieutenant Jericho. The fort now lacks protection from the northwest. Lieutenant Moreau warns Commandant Jotran directly about the danger. The northwest wall lies open to imminent German attack. Defenders at Casemate 3 must remain especially alert. Casemate 4 stands silenced after Harlos's charge against the exit. The fort lies defenseless to the west and southwest. Belgian fire intensifies along the canal. Rounds strike the canal banks and ricochet wildly across the water. At 2100, Portsteffen again tries to launch his boats. Belgian searchlights illuminate the sector from the fort. Casemate 17 fires on every suspicious movement. He fails once more under the weight of fire. About an hour later, darkness conceals his platoon. His men shift their damaged boats to a point opposite the fort's northern tip. A sharp whistle sends the pioneers darting from cover with the craft. They tumble aboard and push off into the dark water. Within minutes, Belgian observers spot them on the canal. Flashes erupt from the fort, only a few hundred meters ahead and to their left. Artillery shells throw up geysers in the canal around the boats. Dense smoke clouds the bank behind them. The platoon reaches the opposite embankment. Feldwebel Portsteffen works his men along the narrow bank on the fort's northwest side. They skirt the flooded ground around the gear. Late in the night, they reach the moat along the northwest wall. Only the moat now separates them from the fortress. After dark, Obergefreiter Walter Meyer, the German commander of the lost Gruppe 2, returns once more to the western bank of the canal. Using field glasses, he observes German infantry now occupying the eastern bank. To his astonishment, they open fire on him. They fail to recognize his airborne uniform in the dark. Meyer attempts to signal that he is German. He can show them a safe route to the fort. The combination of the destroyed bridge and continued Belgian machine gun fire prevents the infantry from crossing. Frustrated, Meyer exposes himself to Belgian fire and crosses back to the eastern bank. There, he briefs 2 German infantry lieutenants on the situation. Despite all complications, relief for the paratroopers is finally imminent. Before the infantry reaches Casemate, the 3 88mm batteries of Aldinger's Abteilung move forward. They take up positions on a hill midway between Fort St. Peter and the Albert Canal. Fort St. Peter is an old Dutch fort south of Maastricht with no strategic value. From there, the batteries improve the accuracy of their fire. They support the attacks on the canal crossings. They also provide crucial assistance to Sturmgruppe Granit. Witzig's force remains cut off and, in a critical situation, outside Fort Eben Emael. At 22:30, the bridgehead established by the Fallschirmjäger after a day of intense fighting finally makes contact with Oberleutnant Mikosch, the same Mikosch whose 51st Pionier-Bataillon has fought west through Casemate since the afternoon. A hazardous relief operation follows. The 6th and 7th Company of the 2nd Battalion, Infantry Regiment 151, prepare to cross. They are reinforced by the 2nd and 3rd Company of Pionier-Bataillon 51. A machine gun platoon supports them. They cross the Albert Canal in rubber dinghies. Before this crossing, German troops succeed in silencing machine gun fire from well-concealed Belgian positions outside Casemate. Another decisive factor is the suppression of Belgian artillery fire. At 0300, the relieving forces reach the airborne troops and take over their positions. During these hours, Oberleutnant Meyer continues his urgent search for the remaining men of his Gruppe at Casemate. He later records that he is unable to find them. An infantry officer has ordered them back to Maastricht after relieving them. The order recognizes their actions at Casemate. Meyer later learns that Gefreiter Bader alone has taken 121 Belgian prisoners. He does manage to locate Gefreiter Ullmann, who has remained behind. Ullmann appears exhausted and worn down. He has fired throughout the night toward the western bank of the canal. Although Ullmann wishes to accompany him, Meyer sends him to the dressing station. Meyer then returns to Block 2. There, he finally meets his Sturmgruppenführer, Oberleutnant Rudolf Witzig. Shortly afterwards, infantry units arrive and complete the relief of the airborne troops. At approximately 21:15, Commandant Jotran issues orders for the night. He establishes a guard system for continuous manning of the barricades. He arranges regular relief at guns and observation posts. He directs that he be informed immediately of any German activity. Remaining operable guns are to fire periodically to restrict German movement. Interdiction fire from Fort Pontis is requested to discourage German activity overnight. From inside Fort Eben Emael, sporadic machine gun fire and shell bursts are audible. The sound comes mainly from the direction of the canal. It remains unclear whether the fire comes from the German attackers on Casemate 17 or from its defenders. Flares illuminate the area around Casemate 33 at intervals. Some are Belgian and some are German. German artillery falls close to the fort at intervals. The defensive measures in place would, on paper, have been sufficient against a force many times the size of Oberleutnant Witzig's. The garrison's unease increases as the night continues. The hollow charge remains an unidentified weapon to the Belgians. This uncertainty affects their assessment of their ability to resist further attacks. A detail begins shifting explosives towards Casemate 18, apparently for more convenient positioning. Rumors spread within the fort. They say the Germans have entered the tunnels. They say the tunnel to Casemate 18 is about to be blown. At 3 o'clock, a heavy explosion shakes the command post and the installations near the entrance. It appears to originate from German artillery positioned behind the walls of the mill. The machine guns and 60mm guns of Casemate 22 return fire. Guns at the entrance Casemate and at Casemate 6 also engage. They aim to deny an infantry assault from the direction of Casemate 19 access to the walls. Jotran, anticipating increased German activity, sends officers to each barricade with orders to hold at all costs. Further underground noises follow. Reports circulate within the fort. They say the Germans have crossed the canal and begun tunneling beneath the works. Chief Surgeon Dr. Stegen credits this report. In the early hours of May 11, 1940, additional Fallschirmjäger under Lieutenant Meissner cross to the eastern bank of the canal and join Feldwebel Portsteffen. Their orders instruct them to silence Casemate 4. They must prevent it from blocking a German attack from the west. Inside the tunnels below the Casemate, morale sags. The incessant pounding above wears down the garrison. Smoke seeps through the steel door of Casemate 4. Sergeant Zone commands a Belgian detachment manning sandbagged guns aimed down the tunnel. He reports that the barricade has been blown. His report proves incorrect. It nonetheless raises alarm at the command post. The staff believes the Germans are seizing control of the interior. Feldwebel Portsteffen's Pionier drop explosives into Casemate 13. The blast destroys the stairs. It tears the doors and steel barriers from their supports. Crews from installations to the north withdraw towards the command post. The canal-facing side of the fort now stands undefended. Gaps remain in vital passageways between German and Belgian positions. Sensing collapse, the Germans turn to terror. They fire small arms down the long dark tunnels. They drop heavy charges into entryways they cannot descend. They keep up incessant noise and pressure to demoralize the garrison. By dusk, Oberleutnant Mikosch's force reaches the blown bridge at Casemate. The Belgian 2nd Regiment de Grenadiers offers light fire. He forces a crossing in rubber assault boats. He disassembles his heavier equipment to shuttle it piecemeal over the Albert Canal. By midnight, his forces assemble on the west bank. Meltzer works through the night. He positions men and anti-tank guns under artillery support at Caen. He places high-velocity anti-tank cannon behind the walls of the mill at Loverix. The mill stands several hundred meters from the fort entrance. From there, the guns are to engage Casemates 3 and 6 at dawn. Casemate 3 serves as the entrance's defensive position and the key to the southwest corner. Sergeants de Barcy and Lecron stand heroically at their posts. German anti-tank fire from Loverix and machine gun fire from the ruins of Lecron's own cottage batter the Casemate. Lecron has already lost his wife and 2 children to the bombing of the village. Despite the danger, the men stay with their guns. They fire on Feldwebel Portsteffen's men working on the fort's surface near Casemate 4. Sergeants de Grange and Lecron continue firing even after the Germans take the Casemate. They make the Germans pay for it. At 9 o'clock, Captain Hottemans and Lieutenant de Sluver enter the Casemate to observe the Germans through the embrasures. Jotron is preparing another counterattack and assembling volunteers. A German anti-tank round then strikes the wall. Grenades tumble past the main entrance. Portsteffen's troops have reached the entrance superstructure. On receiving this report, Commandant Jotron cancels the counterattack. Around the same time, Chaplain Meesen walks through the tunnels under the fort. Only his lamp provides light in the passageways. Smoke obscures his view. Below Casemate 18, a small light hangs near sealed doors. He hears German voices beyond, tearing at the barrier. Meesen turns back to the command post. Jotrand is burning secret military papers. Meesen now grasps the gravity of the situation. Jotrand sends him to check the men at the 120mm guns. These are the same guns Kremers operated on the previous morning, before the breaches were ruined. He finds the crews alert, but frustrated. They cannot use their guns. Whenever they open the breaches to fire, a German grenade might tumble in. This threat recurs repeatedly and deters aggressive fire. Later, Chaplain Meesen stands near Commandant Jotrin at the command post. A violent explosion shakes the position. Concrete chunks rain down from the ceiling. A wounded man staggers past in the dust. Men challenge each other in the dark tunnels. They are uncertain whether the sound ahead is friend or foe. No one knows the true situation. Lieutenant Quittin passes like a phantom with his carbine and vanishes into the blackness. Anguish and fear give way to stark terror. A subsequent explosion shakes the command post and dislodges further chunks of concrete. At 9 o'clock, Van der Auwera, Levac, and the defenders at the sandbag barrier in Casemate 12 see heavy smoke emerging from beneath the steel doors ahead of them. Levac's force has manned this barrier since Hotemans ordered its construction the previous night, after Harlos blew out the exit at Casemate 4. On the surface of the fort, Oberleutnant Witzig and Feldwebel Portsteffen continue to coordinate the next phase. They move between positions and relieve glider troops who have held their casemates overnight. Arendt, still inside Casemate 12 with the captured 75mm gun, judges that relief is near. He detonates a 45-kilogram charge in the stairwell of the casemate. The blast destroys the shafts, the ammunition elevator, and the stairs. It blows out the steel doors. It hurls the officers and men at the sandbag barricade back into the fort's interior. Hotemans later compares the effect to the propellant of a bullet firing in a gun barrel. Pressure confined in the tunnel knocks some men flat. It drives others into walls. It propels debris down the tunnel at high velocity. Shortly afterwards, Lieutenants Police and Legai arrive at the command post from Casemate 18. They report the barriers there breached. De Sluver follows with news of the Casemate 12 explosion. Sergeant Corombel and Soldats Desjardins, Massot, and Gillet are killed. Others lie unconscious in the rubble. Van der Auwera suffers concussion. Levac is burned and disoriented. He issues firing orders to soldiers who are not present. The explosions rupture barrels of chloride of lime stored for sanitation. Chlorine mixes with the smoke-laden air. Men report drowsiness and severe headaches. Maintaining alertness at posts becomes more difficult. Debris clogs the tunnels. Wounded men accumulate in the passageways. Some move toward the command post. Others hold their posts or remain trapped by blocked routes of withdrawal. German anti-tank guns then engage Casemate 30 on the southeast wall. Under Sergeant de Grange, the position remains structurally intact. It returns fire against machine guns and anti-tank guns at several points outside the fort. A high-velocity shell disables the West 60mm cannon. The machine gun in the embrasure below continues firing. A subsequent shell penetrates the 1.2-meter reinforced concrete wall. It severs electrical cables and stops the ventilation. De Grange orders gas masks and returns his crew to the remaining guns. A further shell wounds Soldat Smets. Another strikes the east embrasure and wedges between the 60mm gun and the opening, disabling it. German small arms fire continues against the embrasures. The fire sends concrete fragments into the defenders. Ammunition runs low at the position. The final machine gun eventually fails. At 10:30, Commandant Jotran orders Casemate 30 abandoned and the tunnel barricaded. This silences a key position on the southeast wall. It also opens the possibility of German penetration through these casemates into the tunnel system. Casemates 12 and 18 have been reported destroyed. Jotran does not accept the reports without verification. He enters the tunnels leading to them. He finds the situation less severe than reported. Only Casemate 12 is fully destroyed. No Germans are present in the tunnels. He recognizes that Germans reaching the tunnels could fire directly into the command post. He relocates his headquarters to the next lower level. He leaves several staff at the main command post to coordinate the remaining artillery. Lieutenants Quitin, Michaud, and Debray hold the fire direction center. Lieutenants Dehus and Douce remain at the barricades. Jotran inspects the infirmary and other positions. At 11:20, an explosion destroys the lower part of Casemate 17. This is the same Casemate 17 that has held out against Harlos's repeated hollow charges and Portsteffen's crossing attempts. Two men at the barricade below suffer serious burns. The machine guns are destroyed. Lighting reduces to flashlights and hurricane lamps. An auxiliary ventilator has stopped. Efforts to restart the main ventilation system produce only brief results before failing. Smoke and chlorine concentration in the air increases. Men at the barricades cough and request relief. Officers refuse the requests and order masks worn. Requests for reinforcements at the barriers prompt the assembly of 25 men. The group diminishes as men slip away into side passages. One officer is later found hiding under a bed. One sergeant reaches his destination with 3 of the 10 men who set out with him. By mid-morning, conditions in the lower levels have deteriorated significantly. A few defenders still man barricades. Wounded and asphyxiated men lie in the tunnels near the hospital. Commandant Jotran's requests for evacuation ambulances receive no response. Some weapons remain operational. Many men are combat ineffective from fatigue, fear, or exposure to the atmosphere. By that time, Oberleutnant Witzig's men have departed the fort's surface. German ground troops now move freely over the surface and surrounding ground. At 10:45, Commandant Jotran reaches his superior at Liège, requesting relief and a counterattack. At 11 o'clock, he receives word that no relief will be forthcoming. Reports indicate he conveys to Liège that the enemy has reached the command post. In subsequent communications, he details conditions. Continued resistance will produce casualties without tactical gain. Some weapons remain operable. Notably, the 75mm guns at Casemate 9 still function, along with the artillery direction center and certain other facilities. Belgian losses to that point numbered 25 killed, along with 4 officers and 59 men wounded. Jotran then contacts the Général de 3e Corps d'Armée, Lieutenant Général Joseph de Crae. De Crae and his commandant de l'artillerie du 3e Corps d'Armée, Général-Major Albert Jadot, face comparable difficulties. They contact the commanding Général de Premier Corps d'Armée, who holds direct command over Eben Emael. In the 3-party conversation that follows, no commander accepts responsibility for authorizing surrender. The commander of the 1st Corps d'Armée suggests they take necessary measures with de Crae's concurrence. De Crae states that the fort is not under his direct command. A decision on capitulation rests with General Headquarters. He orders Captain Gayson of his staff to obtain a decision from General Headquarters by telephone. Gayson cannot reach anyone there. Gayson then drafts an instruction. The fort's commander alone can decide whether to cease the defense after consulting his defense council. If surrender follows, the commander is to destroy the works after evacuation. As he writes, a report indicates German armored units are approaching the fort. Gayson adds that if evacuation proves impossible, the commander is to destroy the fort with its garrison inside. De Crae approves the message and it is transmitted to Jotran. Commandant Jotran convenes a council of defense under fort regulations and formally reads the surrender articles. Present are Dr. Willems, the head surgeon. Captain Vamek attends, acting for the wounded van der Auwera. Lieutenant Michaud is present. Lieutenant Polis serves as recording secretary. Hotemans, Lieutenant Verstraeten, and Premier Sergeant Nistum complete the council. Jotran summarizes the situation and reads Article 51 of the Instruction on the Defense of a Fort. Under this article, surrender stands justified only if all defensive means of the fort and its personnel prove useless and non-reparable. It also stands justified if subsistence is exhausted. He asks each member for his assessment. All favor surrender. A statement committing each signatory to the decision is prepared and signed. The council agrees that evacuation should be permitted where possible. The wounded should receive honorable treatment. International conventions governing prisoners of war should be observed. The council meets for 25 minutes. Jotron then enters the tunnels to inform the garrison. Commandant Jotron intends to leave the fort with those willing to continue the fight and rejoin the Belgian army. He tells the men, "We are going to attempt to leave the fort to rejoin the Belgian army. I am your commander, and I will lead the way." The garrison responds that they wish to surrender. Jotron then reaches General Major Jadot's administrative officer by telephone. Jadot refuses to authorize surrender and insists the fort must first be destroyed. Jotron resolves to comply with the intent of the order. Of the fort's 17 major works, 7 remain in action. Their supplies are dwindling or exhausted. Their crews are reduced. They offer only limited fire against heavy German pressure. Commandant Jotron assigns surrender negotiations to Captain Hotemans. He instructs him to prolong discussions long enough to destroy the remaining works. Jotron later records that it is not in Belgium's interest to surrender at once. Sending an emissary to find the German commander and return with officials for formal negotiations will yield time for demolition. A further meeting of the Defense Council will yield more. Whether he communicates this strategy to his negotiators is unclear. Captain Hotemans first goes to the gunners at the entrance casemate and orders them to cease fire. Sergeant de Barzy, engaged against a bridge across the gear, does not respond. Hotemans repeats the order and physically removes him from the gun. Sergeant Boursu, manning the 60mm cannon, withdraws. Its crew chief, Sergeant Lecron, and the 2 Peters brothers also withdraw. Lecron has fired throughout the attack, despite the loss of his family in the bombing of the village. The men under Sergeant Hermes do the same. De Barzy remains with Hotemans. The escort detailed to protect Hotemans outside the fort does not materialize. The surrender party comprises Hotemans, de Barzy, Soldat de Moulin carrying the white flag, and the bugler Verviers. When Hotemans reaches the gate and it is lowered, he stops. He later states he considers the decision to surrender premature and declines to act as its agent. He has been among the first 3 officers assigned to Eben Emael on its commissioning. He asks Jotron to reassign the mission. Commandant Jotron assigns it to Captain Vamek, who meets Hotemans at the gate and asks him not to relinquish it. By mid-morning, Meltzer has reinforced Mikosch. A German artillery force under Hauptmann Haubold has joined Mikosch in and around the village of Eben Emael. Haubold dispatches units trained in destroying armored emplacements to reduce Casemate 17. Other casemates begin to fall. The Germans on the fort's surface begin to hear underground explosions, not of their own making. On Commandant Jotron's orders, Lieutenant Delcourt destroys the electrical system. He leaves minimal lighting only in essential installations. He uses approximately 9 kilograms of dynamite against all but 1 generator. Lieutenant Quitten works through the interior with crowbars, axes, and sledgehammers. He destroys fuse boxes, power terminals, telephone switchboards, and elevator mechanisms. By 1300, Hauptmann Haubold's guns break the crew of Cupola 23. The Cupola's guns had earlier demolished the bridge at Lanay. Sergeant Fourier sets heavy charges against the guns, fuses them, and withdraws with his crew. Pelletier, who has served 28 hours as an observer without relief, pulls a cord routed through the tunnel to the fuses. The charges detonate. Casemate 34, which had withstood Stuka attack the previous day, has its guns rendered inoperable by sustained fire. Sergeant Janvier and his crew withdraw into the interior. Orders to blow up Casemate 9 fail when the charges in the guns do not detonate. The Germans later find the position intact. When messengers order Sergeant Flamand to destroy his guns, he refuses, without a personal order from an officer. No officer provides one. Commandant Jotran orders Lieutenant Gigot to destroy the 120mm guns. Gigot reports the task will require at least 90 minutes. He must cross the barriers. He must move heavy charges through unlit passageways and stairways with missing treads. He must reach the firing chambers to place explosives. At 13:10, the 120mm cupola remains intact. Jotran sends Dehus and 6 non-commissioned officers to assist Gigot. At approximately the same moment, Soldat Ancia approaches Jotran and volunteers to destroy Casemate 38. He reports that a charge is already in place, but that a battery to initiate it is missing. Ancia goes to the power central, retrieves a battery from the maintenance shop, and returns through the tunnels. The resulting explosion at Casemate 38 is heard throughout the fort. Ancia does not return. He has destroyed the casemate and himself with it. His action is the final act of demolition by the garrison. At approximately 13:15, the sound of a bugle grows audible above the continuing small arms, artillery, and anti-tank fire. As it grows louder, German troops cease firing. Bugler Verviers stands within the recesses of the gate, exposed to ricocheting rounds and concrete fragments. He sounds the call for surrender. He continues for several minutes. Firing near the entrance ceases and artillery fire diminishes. Capitaine Vamek then emerges from behind Verviers. Desmoulins carries the white flag across the drawbridge and places it against the wall outside the entrance. German troops signal Vamek forward. He advances, and the bridge is raised behind him. He walks to a gate and meets the Germans with Verviers at his side. Following German instructions, Vamek surrenders his pistol. A French-speaking German officer arrives. Vamek withdraws the bolt of the gate, opens it, and steps through. The gate closes automatically behind him and is not locked. Vamek informs the Germans that the fort is surrendering. He requests military honors and evacuation of the wounded. 2 Germans escort him towards the bridge over the Gier to meet the German commander. Looking back, he observes several hundred Belgians filing from the fort with their hands raised. A German non-commissioned officer has opened the gate and ordered a Belgian to lower the drawbridge, which is done. Belgians, standing at the foot of the bridge inside the fort, begin filing out, believing a surrender has been concluded. German troops, with weapons ready, move through the exiting column into the fort's interior. At 13:17, below the command post, Dehus learns of events at the exit. He climbs to the next level to report to Jotran. Jotran attempts to reach the guard room at the gate by telephone and fails. He then attempts to contact Liège. Lieutenant Delrez places the call. The line is apparently open, but no one answers. On Jotran's instructions, Delrez announces, "We have surrendered." The time is 13:27. Liège does not respond. Both officers then work to disable the telephones and destroy remaining classified material. Gigot returns from the 120mm cupola to collect additional explosives, unaware of events at the entrance. He encounters men with their hands raised. Informed that the fort has surrendered, he continues with his task and returns to the cupola, where he meets Polis. They determine that they cannot carry out Jotran's order. They return to Hoteman's office, where they find de Sluver, Verstraeten, and Leguy. The group then moves to the exit. The 120mm guns have been seriously damaged by Oberleutnant Witzig's troops the previous day. Their reconditioning is unlikely. demolition of the cupola would have served a symbolic rather than a tactical purpose. Commandant Jotran and Lieutenant Del Rez complete the destruction of papers and move through the tunnels. Passing the workshop, where a German soldier is posted, Jotran indicates that he wishes to collect personal effects from his quarters and receives permission to do so. In the tunnel outside his billet, he encounters the medical staff removing the wounded. He follows the last of them past the German guards. The Germans conduct themselves correctly towards the Belgian wounded. Outside the fort, Jotran finds his officers unarmed and assembling for the march to the village. Oberleutnant Mikosch approaches Commandant Jotran and asks, "Major Jotran, will you give me your word of honor that you have placed no delayed mines within the fort?" Jotran answers, "There are none. I give you my word of honor." He can give this assurance because the Belgians hold no such weapons at the fort. Mikosch then addresses the Belgian officers. "I congratulate you on your courage. Someone must be defeated in war. I am sorry this must happen to you, but this is war. I must send you to Germany." Mikosch's troops secure the fort, searching every tunnel and gun chamber and inventorying equipment. Many of the serviceable or repairable guns are later issued to German units on the Eastern Front. Late in the search, German troops hear muffled voices and pounding from a casemate telephone switchboard room. Opening the door, they find two young Belgian soldiers, Noel and Petit. Witzig orders his force to collect its equipment and assemble. His detachment has lost 26 men, of approximately 80, over slightly more than 24 hours of combat. 6 of those losses are killed. At 1600, after the German dead have been buried, Witzig's force moves to the area near the fort entrance with 30 Belgian prisoners. He turns them over to Hauptmann Haubolt, one of Mikosch's officers. Some of Witzig's men are attached to Hauptmann Haubolt's command. The Belgian garrison, including Jotran, is removed under guard. Witzig's troops march past the Loverix mill, heavily damaged by fire from the fort, by artillery, and by Stuka bombs. They continue into the village of Eben Emael. The men stop at a tavern. Some hours later, the column of Belgian prisoners, approximately 1.6 kilometers long, passes the tavern. The men of Sturmgruppe Eisen are also relieved from the morning on. Rubber dinghies operate continuously, forming a makeshift ferry. Only wounded men and Belgian prisoners remain to be transported across. By about 1500, the last Eisen Fallschirmjäger leave Cannes and rejoin the other survivors in Maastricht. They spend the night of May 11th, 1940, in a school building. On May 12th, 1940, the men of Sturmabteilung Koch travel by lorry to Cologne. In Maastricht, the column is halted by a British air raid. Further delays occur en route to Cologne, where roads are clogged with German military traffic moving into Belgium and the Netherlands. After their arrival at Cologne Ostheim Aerodrome in the afternoon, the men travel again by lorry to the Cologne suburb of Delbrück. At around 1800, the Fallschirmjäger arrive at the Delbrück barracks in Cologne. Hauptmann Koch files his official report that all objectives have been met. The award of the Eisernes Kreuz Zweiter Klasse follows for all men of his assault groups. The next day, the Fallschirmjäger moved to Münster. Their officers split them into their assault groups for the visit of General Kesselring, Oberbefehlshaber of Luftflotte II. Kesselring personally awards each man the Eisernes Kreuz Erster Klasse. Only one Fallschirmjäger, Ernst Grechsa of Sturmgruppe Granit, receives no decoration. During the fight at Fort Eben Emael, he is caught being drunk. Initially, all members of Sturmabteilung Koch, without exception, receive Eiserne Kreuzer. Men who actually fought on the battlefield then complain. All non-combatants, such as drivers and armorers, must return their decorations. Other Fallschirmjäger also lose theirs. Members of Troop 2 of Sturmgruppe Beton give up their awards because their glider came down inside Germany when the tow rope parted prematurely. When Adolf Hitler learns of the capture of Fort Eben Emael, his mood of jubilation prompts an immediate decision. He awards Koch and Witzig the Ritterkreuz the same day, May 10, 1940. They become the first Wehrmacht recipients of the decoration during the Western Campaign. The Ritterkreuz can only go to men already holding the Eisernes Kreuz Erster und Zweiter Klasse. Both classes are, therefore, awarded to them the same day. It is then decided that all officers of Sturmabteilung Koch present on the battlefield on May 10, 1940, should also receive the Ritterkreuz. In some photographs from the Eisernes Kreuz Erster Klasse ceremony on May 13, 1940, several officers already wear the Ritterkreuz before its official presentation. On May 14, 1940, back in their Hildesheim quarters, the men of Sturmabteilung Koch receive 6 days of special leave. The official Ritterkreuz ceremony for the officers takes place on May 15, 1940, at Hitler's Führerhauptquartier Felsenest near Rodert and Münstereifel. He personally decorates Koch, Witzig, Altmann, Deliker, Kies, Zierach, Jäger, Ringler, and Meissner. Others, such as Apke and Schecher, receive theirs later. Apke faces delay for bureaucratic reasons. Schechter lies hospitalized with serious wounds. Approximately 500 Belgian soldiers leave the fort and enter captivity. They are held in strict isolation until July 4, 1940. The isolation conceals the German use of glider troops and shaped charges. 23 Belgian soldiers are killed during the fighting. 62 others are wounded. Belgian sources indicate that approximately 750 soldiers are present at the beginning of the attack. The authorized strength is 1,200. About 15% are absent on leave. Others are quartered in nearby villages and arrive later. Of the 85 German paratroopers committed to the assault on the fort, 6 are killed. Apart from injuries sustained during hard landings, 20 are wounded. And that concludes today's episode. It also concludes the third part of our coverage of Sturmgruppe Granit. And with that, we reach the end of our series on Unternehmen Danzig. Across this series, we followed the daring German airborne operation against the bridges of the Albert Canal and the great Belgian fortress that guarded them. We began with the planning at Hildesheim under Hauptmann Walter Koch, the months of glider training under absolute secrecy, and the assembly of Sturmabteilung Koch from selected Fallschirmjäger and Pioniere of the Luftwaffe. We followed the 4 assault groups in turn. Sturmgruppe Stahl seized the bridge at Feldwebel. Sturmgruppe Beton took the bridge at Vroonhoven. Sturmgruppe Eisen fought through Canal against demolitions and Belgian counterattack, and Sturmgruppe Granit landed on the roof of Fort Eben Emael itself. Across these episodes, we trace the operation from the gliders cast loose over German soil in the dark of May 10, 1940, through the morning fight on the superstructure under Oberfeldwebel Wenzel, the return of Oberleutnant Witzig at 8:30, the long afternoon and night of Casemate demolitions, the failed Belgian counterattacks under Verstraeten, Wagemans, Van der Auwera, and Levac, the hazardous canal crossing by Feldwebel Portsteffen and the 51st Pionier-Bataillon, and the final breaking of the garrison under Commandant Jotron on May 11, 1940. We followed Walter Meyer's lone crossings at Kana, the work of the hollow charge against the cupolas, the silencing of the 120mm guns, the explosion at Casemate 12, and the final act of Soldat Ansia at Casemate 38. We closed with the surrender at 13:15, the march into captivity, and the Ritterkreuz ceremony at Felsenest. Unternehmen Danzig stands as the first large-scale glider assault in military history and the first combat use of the hollow charge. 85 Fallschirmjäger, of whom 6 were killed and 20 wounded, broke a fortress designed to hold a division. The bridges fell within minutes, and the road into Belgium lay open to the 6th Armée. In putting this series together, several works proved indispensable. James Mrazek's account of the assault on Fort Eben Emael provided essential operational context, as did Chris McNabb's study of the Belgian campaign in 1940. Alongside these, we drew on the post-operational accounts of Sturmabteilung Koch and the personal testimony of Oberleutnant Witzig, Feldwebel Wenzel, and Walter Meyer, together with the Belgian garrison records of Major Jotran and his officers. For maps, photographs, original documents, and the full source base behind this series, please visit www.worldwar2-sof.com. I'm your host, Michael Wires, signing off. And that concludes this mission briefing, fellow warriors of knowledge. We've navigated through the trenches of information, delving deep into the battlefields of history. As we wrap up this episode in our campaign for understanding, remember that knowledge is your most potent weapon. Stay vigilant and keep sharpening your intellectual arsenal. We'll rendezvous again for another episode, continuing our relentless pursuit of enlightenment. Until then, keep your mind sharp, your curiosity burning, and your determination unwavering. Simultaneously, you are hereby alerted to our outposts on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, fortifying our information dissemination. Should you possess any pertinent intelligence to bolster our mission, transmit your findings with no hesitation. Your contributions shall be prominently acknowledged within the operational archives. Furthermore, for those prepared to provide substantial reinforcement, navigate to our Patreon forward base and enlist. Your support is integral to sustaining our forward thrust. Carry forth the legacy. Dismissed.